Hello and welcome to another Tim Talk podcast by Celtic Down Under. I'm your host, Jarrod, and joining me tonight is our special guest from the Celtic FC Appreciation Podcast. We're joined by their host, Gaz Smith. How you going, Gaz?
Yeah, not bad, mate. How's yourself?
Oh, yeah, getting by. Starting to get a bit fresh and cold and everything over here, snowing like crazy, so good fun. You
Yeah,
guys are all...
it's not too bad over here. It's not been raining for a while, so it's the start of a summer.
Had to bring it up because I can see daylight and sunshine in the background. I'm like, what's that? We got snow like happening crazy amounts like 2 hours away from my house and haven't had a day over 12 degrees. So yeah, let's leave the weather talk there and let's get into some football. So what we do with these Tim Talk podcasts is I get on, I have a chat with different Celtic fans, Celtic podcasters, just anyone basically who wants to come on, have a chat about their lifetime supporting Celtic, what their thoughts are at the current situation at the club, some memorable moments for them. So thanks for jumping on, Gaz. Really appreciate that.
No worries, mate.
First question for you. The reason I'll do this one is because I go in with an Australian accent into a CSC and you start talking to someone and they go, oh, you're Australian. How'd you become a Celtic fan? So, Gaz, what's your story? How'd you become a Celtic fan?
Well, basically, when you're born in, I think when you're born in Scotland and more in particular Glasgow, they call Glasgow the Goldfish Bowl for a reason because all eyes are on you. If you're a football fan, you either support Celtic or Rangers, and a lot of people are kind of born into Celtic or Rangers supporting families. My family is more probably mixed, but my dad and my kind of close immediate family were all Celtic fans, so there was never going to be an option of who to support. And growing up in the 90s, it would have probably been easier to support Rangers because of success. But Celtic was my first love, and I can remember the season that we stopped Rangers for winning 10 in a row. I can remember watching it on the TV and my dad coming home and giving us a champions flag, and we stayed 3 floors up, and the traffic came from Celtic Park, and you just like fly that out the window, and flying this champions flag, and all the cars are beating their horns, and that's my kind of earliest kind of memory of really kind of getting to love Celtic.
You got to love those sort of stories. That's the sort of thing. It just puts a smile on my face. Like, I'm jealous that you've got those memories growing up. Like, that's something you hang on to, you tell your kids about in the future and all that sort of stuff. So that's well played by your dad, well played by you. And yeah, it's just great. Like, you're spot on though. You're pretty much born into it. You don't really have a choice. And yeah, the 90s was a tough time, especially over here for me. It was, we were watching games a month late on tapes, no internet back then. So you go to the CSC, you'd sit there, you watch games, and next thing you know, it's oh, we lost the league a month ago and we're only finding out now. Brilliant. Yeah. But
I mean, just to touch on that, I remember the old firm derbies as they were known back then, because it was Glasgow derbies now. But the old firm games when my dad used to take me to the pub, and there used to be almost a kind of atmosphere. This was obviously back in the days when people could smoke in pubs and things like that. So there would be a kind of atmosphere in there, and the big screen would be down. And as I say, growing up in the 90s, we lost more derbies than we actually won. But those days when we would win against Rangers, they were the days to be they were the days you remembered as well, kind of thing, because you had a big party after. We always had a party after the games, win, lose or draw, because that's who we are. But I think when you remember those games back then, it felt more of a kind of derby, more of an edge kind of thing.
yeah, it was more of a cup final sort of thing for you because you're not winning them. So when you win one, you celebrate it like you just won the cup. So
yeah,
it was a strange time back then. But you go from that to the last 20 years where we've been the most dominant team, 15 league titles out of 20, and yeah, it's just night and day basically. And the 90s make me appreciate what we're going through now, what we're doing now, what we're winning. So happy days. So on that, Gaz, how do you think Ange is doing as a manager?
Well, to be honest, I think when you look at it, I'll hold my hands up, and I was kind of very, very pessimistic when very deflated, I suppose, when the Eddie Howe deal collapsed, because I think we'd invested so much into it. We knew Eddie Howe, we knew how he played football. teams like Bournemouth and things like that. So we were very, very invested in that deal. So when that collapsed last minute, I think the fans were almost like, where are we going with this? Ange Postecoglou's name came up right away, and I'll be honest, I didn't know who he was. Obviously looked into it, and eventually we had, near the start of my podcast, we had a guy called Scott McIntyre, who you may know is an Australian journalist, and he came on and he followed Ange's career, and he had really kind of lit the touch paper, because what he told us about Ange Postecoglou, what to expect from him, that kind of calmed a lot of people down, because I can remember the one quote that he came away with. It was something like, they were talking about Eddie Howe, and he's saying, nah, Eddie Howe, if you ask any people over, they'll think it's a sports brand or something, they'll know who Eddie Howe is, but he says, Ange Postecoglou is nobody's second prize. And listen, when you look at it, everything he told me came true. When there was games, when you were 1-0 up, he wasn't going into the corner with the ball. He wasn't trying to waste time. He'd want to get the second goal. And we've seen that in games where probably the fans have maybe been shouting at the players to go into the corner and waste time. He's just like, no, go for the killer, go for the second goal. And that's what Celtic fans want to see, kind of thing. So listen, he's done it. He's had a remarkable first season. I was on a football show, a football radio show over here in Glasgow called the Go Radio Football Show, and I was talking to the guys maybe about a month before the end of the season, and I says to them, if Ange delivers a League and Cup double in his first season, ask him where he wants the statue built outside, because that it sounds a bit kind of pie in the sky stuff, but I think when you look back at the start of the season, when we were playing players like Dane Murray in defence and Stephen Welsh, and we didn't really have a proper team. It was just kind of thrown together. To get from there to now, it's just like, I think Celtic fans are actually going into next season thinking we could do something in the Champions League. To consider we've not been in there for 5 years, that's quite a remarkable kind of statement.
Well, it's funny what you say there, because I'm going to say, and it's very similar to Scott, what he said to you, but we told you so. Like, honestly, when I was invested in Eddie Howe too, but for me, my second option was David Wagner. That's who I wanted, the former Huddersfield manager. The reason I wanted him is because we had a guy in our Facebook group, I put up a thing, who do you want as manager? And he put up Ange Postecoglou. And I laughed at it, and no chance, like the board would do that. And that was the reason I brushed it off. So this bloke said that in, what was it, like April last year, he said it. So that's the one person I knew who called for Ange early doors. Everyone else was like, who's Ange? All of us over here and knew him was like, okay, if he's given time and he can get players in, great. But after the Midtjylland results, I was like, is he on a hiding to nothing? Is he being set up for a fail? That's what I was more worried about. But he's gone on, done well, built his team. That actually, in my opinion, wasn't even Ange's team until the January transfer window opened, and he got a bit more depth in the squad and a few more numbers in. But yeah, going into Europe next year, I'm all excited. I think we need to strengthen a few spots, which we'll touch on later in the podcast. But yeah, 4 or 5 signings for me, and you try and get guys at a starting level, and we're off to the races. We could do something. So.
Yeah. I think as well, just touching on the main appointment kind of thing, because he obviously came in when we had a disastrous season the season before with Neil Lennon, the whole 10-0 saga. It was a horrific time at the club. The fans were disconnected from the club. Nobody really wanted to go to the games. It was just, there was a kind of gap there between the fans and the club, and I think, not just Ange has brought us together, but obviously, I think the whole Don Mackay when he came in, because when the appointment came about, I think there was still a lot of Celtic fans thinking, right, this could be a Martin O'Neill appointment where it could go absolutely like a dream, or it could be a John Barnes saga where there's players fighting in the dressing room, and you're sacked after 6 months and things like that. So I think thankfully they got it right. In the end, and obviously, the whole Don Mackay, we'll never find out what happened there. Very surprising that the press haven't kind of almost touched on that and pressed that and thought what really happened, because nobody seems to have asked the question. But to be fair, Michael Nicholson, who's came in, has done a remarkable job. He's backed Ange in the summer. He's backed him in January. He obviously seen what was happening. I think helping that was winning the League Cup at the tail end of last year. I think that kind of gave us a platform to go on. We were a whisker away for a Scottish Cup final. But I think overall, that the board have got it absolutely spot on with Ange.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Michael Nicholson, the best thing about him is we haven't heard from him. I like that. I don't want to be hearing from the CEO or the chairman. Gaz has just, had a little earthquake there. Everyone watching. Now, for me, it's like
we don't really have one.
I look at it and go, the chairman and the CEO, we don't need to hear from them.
Yeah.
Edward Y was in the comments here. Nicholson is Ange's lapdog. Perfect. Just keep on the checks. Happy days. Those who are watching, if you want to just join in with some comments or got any questions for Gaz or myself, put them through and we'll touch on them a bit later on. But yeah, I'm just thinking this is a good little segue for us in terms of with Nicholson, you bringing him up, because my question was what's your take on the club structure at present? For me, I'm looking at it going, the less we hear from them, the better.
Yeah.
And with Andy coming in, finally bringing in his own assistant in Harry Kuehl, he's been bringing in some sports scientists, he's been bringing in recruiters and all this sort of stuff. It's great, but I want to get your view on it. You're over there, you're in the fishbowl, well and truly compared to me. So
yeah, I think when you look at it, you touched on the Harry Kuehl appointment. Obviously, that came out of left field. I don't think that was ever a possible kind of avenue, but obviously Ange knows him, and Ange is keen to get him on board. He's obviously going to replace Stephen McManus, who goes to the B team. I think that will be probably better for McManus in terms of his management career down the line. That he's going to have more of a say, I think, with the B team rather than the first team. But yeah, delighted to get Harry Kuehl on board, and as he say, Ange is just doing things almost on the quiet, where he's a very private guy, as we've found out this year, kind of thing. He doesn't like to shout and bawl, so he likes to get things done on the quiet if he can. And I think when you say about Michael Nicholson, nobody wants to have a chief executive that is always in the papers or always in the headlines for something, whether it's good or bad. You want him to be in the background, and listen, he's just doing his job, and he's doing it. He's probably gained a lot more respect from the Celtic fans because the previous regime was Peter Lawwell, and I think as good as Peter Lawwell did for the club, there was always going to be fans that was going to be on his back about he didn't spend enough money and he was only lying in his own pockets. But I think we're in a very stable position. I think, as we've touched on, the 10-0 season was a disaster. Put it out of memory, didn't happen, because it could have snowballed into consistently losing league titles, losing cups. Rangers could have went on a dominant run. I think they've got to look at themselves in terms of how they've went from a 25-point league winning position to losing the league by, I think it was 4 points in the end. But when you look at the money deals that we brought in for players like Odsonne Edouard, Christopher Ajer, that went to Brentford and Bournemouth, rather. The good thing is about those deals was not only the fees that we received for the players, because they didn't really want to be at the club. So you don't want players that are just passengers at your club. So I think when you look at it, the good thing was the added bonus of the clauses in the contract where, I think Celtic raked in £7 million at the end of the season there because Brentford stayed up in the Premier League and Bournemouth got automatic promotion, which gives you about £7 million, which basically either buys Jota from Benfica on a permanent, or goes somewhat towards paying for Carter Vickers, who we've also got in a permanent. So that's free money to play with, and that's the way we should be conducting our business. If we're selling players on, like Benfica, I think they're asking for a 30% sell-on clause with Jota, absolutely entitled to. Smart bit of business, because I think Jota is going to be the next big money player to go from Celtic when he signs the permanent, obviously.
I'll just jump on what you said there, because you're saying with the 7 million free money there. You also got to look at, you got all this talk online, Rangers fans in particular saying, oh, Celtic bought the title, they spent 24 million. Yeah, but we banked 36. So,
Yeah,
so realistically, we're 12 million ahead. So realistically, that 12 million to me, that's Jota and Carter Vickers paid for. The 7 million coming in, there you go. That's just money for jam, basically. That's extra money we can go out and spend. Plus, we've got the Champions League money coming in. We're going to soon be seeing, a bit of Scrooge McDucks jumping off springboards, going for a swim in some towns, that sort of stuff. It's gonna be interesting if we have a few years in a row in the Champions League. And talking on Rangers, like how they lost their points margin, the 25 points, so it was a 29-point swing. Then you look at their squad, and it's like they're getting a lot older too, so they're going to need to regenerate their squad. But
yeah,
who's really going to go for a fee? Morelos they'll think I'll get 20 million from Morelos. I'll probably get 5 to 8 in my opinion for him. So it'll be undisclosed. Tavernier is not going to go for much because of his age. Then you look at it, Kent. What do I think they're going to get 25 for him? They'll be lucky to get 10 for him because it's Scotland. Let's be realistic. You're not going to get going down to England. You're not going to pay overs for him. So look at those sort of guys, and it's like I don't really see where the money's coming from. They're talking up Bassi as well. Yet,
I think when you say in terms of the valuation, I do think they will probably get double figures for Morelos. I think it won't be massive double figures, but I think it will be 10 to 12 million. So you're probably not far off the mark there. In terms of, I think Scottish clubs need to start putting pride in their own club and not just bowing down to the clubs in England and saying, all right, we'll accept X amount of money. Because you look at the deals for Kieran Tierney and Odsonne Edward in particular, like, yeah, Celtic and Rangers, and obviously the deal that went through today was Calvin Ramsey to Liverpool from Aberdeen for 6.5, rising to 8. That's for a club like Aberdeen, that is amazing, an amazing bit of business, and hopefully that will make them stronger for the coming seasons, kind of thing. But I absolutely think Ryan Kent would probably go for about 10-15 million as well. To be honest, I think. Bassi will probably stay, but I mean, no one to touch too much on Rangers. But I just think that clubs in Scotland have the right now to. I think the way the national team's going, I think we've got the absolutely right to say to English clubs, "Show me your money," and not just take the first offer, kind of thing.
Well, that's actually why I brought that up, because I don't want to talk about them. Like I was saying in the comments, Martin, got you 100% agree, but the reason I'm bringing them up is because we've been getting 20, 25 million pound players. They've done it got to the Europa League final. They're going to start getting some margins. You got Aberdeen bringing in us. As you said, Scottish teams have got to start asking and demanding and getting those fees coming in. They've got to stop accepting low ball bids. And we've got a lot of players in our squad as well, which is where this all ties in, that are young enough that in a year or 2 or 3 years, if we wanted to sell them on, we'll get these same fees that are being bandied about for their players. We'll have them coming in on top of the Champions League money that we were talking about earlier. So how do you think the recruitment has been over the last 12 to 18 months, Gaz?
I think when you look at, if we go back to summer, if you look at the deadline day, I think there was a deadline day trio signing of, if I'm right, Carter Vickers, Jota and Giakoumakis, which at the time probably might not have seemed like a big deal. But to be honest, when you look at the spine of that team, they 3 players have been so instrumental in winning us the league and the League Cup. Carter Vickers, unbelievable player. How he's not got a team down south, and I'm talking Championship club, a League One club. How nobody was sniffing about him, I don't know, because it's easy. Maybe it's easy to say because he's playing up in the Scottish League, and it's not the best league, and it's not the most thought of league kind of thing when you look at other leagues in Europe. But Jota, I think Jota might have been a bit of a risk. Youngster coming over, might not have adapted to the Scottish game. He has absolutely lit the place up, honestly. And one of the iconic images, I suppose, if you look back in last season, was the Leo Abada goal against Dundee United when he crossed the ball in for Abada, but then decided to jump into the fans and was like Christ the Redeemer, do you know what I mean? But before they grabbed him, and supposedly that was the moment that made him realise, I want to be here. There's nowhere else I want to play. Jackie Makis has been a bit Marmite, do you know what I mean? Like, first half of the season, he wasn't really getting going, missed a penalty against Livingston. Fans were getting tired of him, thinking, does he want to be here? Is he good enough? Don't know what happened over the second half of the season, but he has absolutely blew everybody apart, do you know what I mean? And he's backed up his words in February after the Rangers game when he says we're the best team in Scotland and we've got the best squad in Scotland. He went and backed it up because he banged in hat tricks and braces and all over the place. So they finished joint top goal scorer. So I think when you look at the players that obviously came in, Kyogo, massive player, one of the players this season. Ange knows the J League very well, obviously, and he's obviously tapped into that market that no other manager has tapped into before. There must be so many gems over in the Australian leagues and the J Leagues, and just like there's players that came to Celtic last season that I don't believe were Ange Postecoglou signings. Liam Shaw, Urhoghide, Liam Scales, to mention three. I don't believe they're Ange Postecoglou signings.
James
I think
McCarthy, there's another one.
Yeah, James McCarthy's never an Ange Postecoglou signing. I think they were all just stopgaps until the manager got in, found his feet, and got who he wanted in. But to be fair, the guys he brought in the summer, I know we brought no better guys, but as good players in January, like Rio Hatate, Matty O'Reilly, and players like that, Dyson Maida, things like that, that just add to the team. They don't mess up the team structure, they don't mess up the formation, they just add to it and make it better, because those three players in particular that came in January just kind of pushed us on a wee bit. You had, I think it was Maida that scored in his debut against Hibs after 4 minutes. Hatate was banging him in against Rangers, banging him in against Hearts. Kind of suffered a wee bit of fatigue towards the tail end of the season. Should have been rested more, but that's up to the manager. So I think that I can't remember a season where we've brought in so many players and the fans look at all of them and go, there's not a bad player in amongst anyone. They've all contributed.
I've said it a few times, but the majority of the guys coming in, they're just so likeable. Like when he came in, he banged in goals for his first 5 games and he's done nothing since. And you just don't really like the attitude that you get from him and what you're seeing body language wise. And then you've got, Barkas, old cabbage hands. When he come in, he looked just shook up the whole time. So it's like guys like that, you're like, yeah, iffy about, and that's 10 million spend there. But then you look at Joe Hart and you're like, I was iffy on Joe Hart because I thought, is he going to think he's bigger than the club? It wasn't about him as a footballer. It was that. And he's come in, he's bought in, and that has been a great signing for us. Guys like that sort of situation, it's spot on. But yeah, it's just it's been a bit of an interesting one. Like there's so many talented players and they loving the club. And as Andrew said, he recruits for not just talent level, but give me the man who's going to play and be able to buy into it first, and then he'll go find the football. And if the football's any good, he'll work with them.
Yeah, and I think when you just to touch on that, I mean, Joe Hart, £1 million, you can't buy anybody for £1 million nowadays, Jane. So the fact that he came in, I get what you're saying. That in terms of the guy, is his ego bigger than anything? Do you know what I mean? Like, is he going to think, Scottish League, who wants to go up there? Was he just coming up here for a payday? No. I did say before he played a game that if we can get the crowds back into Celtic Park, if we can get 60,000, roaring the team on, we could end up with the Joe Hart that was at Manchester City, peak Joe Hart, and that was a Joe Hart exactly that we got. But as you say, he bought into the philosophy, he bought into the club, and he bought into the manager. I think it was one chat with Ange that he says he had, and he's like, I'm hooked. I'm absolutely hooked. I'm in. And, I know he's been talking to people down south and basically, imploring them, come up to Scotland, come up to Celtic, because you'll not regret it. Like, I think Joe Hart's probably looking at it now thinking, why did I not come up here sooner?
Yeah.
because I think there was a lot of time missed when he was at Torino, when he was at Burnley, even when he went to Spurs. I think that's years that he could have been at Celtic and winning trophies, playing in Europe. So, I think he's totally bought into it. And listen, he obviously got John Terry up in a Celtic scarf, so that was probably one of the biggest shocks of the season, thinking out John Terry was a Celtic fan.
It's a good way to wind up the other mob.
Yeah, definitely. They went into meltdown, I'll tell you.
Yep. So we'll got a next question for you. I'm going to bring up a question that was sent through by Martin early on because it ties in. So I was going to ask you, which current players at the club do you think will be moving on in the next 6 to 12 months? Start off with this question from Martin. Do you think Christopher Julian is staying by the looks of it? What do you think is going to happen with Julian?
Julian's a conundrum because Julian, I was going to speak about when the players that's moving on, because it very much looked like Julian was going to move on and go back to France maybe. But from what I'm hearing late last night was that he's told Ange Postecoglou that he wants to stay and fight for his place, and that he wants to get in either, ahead of Carter Vickers or Starfelt, which is great to hear because, listen, we all love Christopher Julian and the goals he scored against Lazio, against Rangers. That's the kind of Christopher Julian you want, a big menace at the back and a big menace in the box up front. So time will tell whether Ange wants him. It's up to the manager, obviously. But he wants to stay apparently. So, time will tell on that one. I hope he stays though.
For me, I look at it and go, I'm a bit unsure of if Julian fits Ange's type of football because he was never the greatest guy at passing the ball around, but he can play that left centre back, which we need, and he is the tall centre back because you look at our guys, Starfelt and Carter Vickers are both 6 foot, 6'1", something like that.
Yeah.
Welsh is 6 foot as well. Dane Murray, if he comes in, he's the tallest at 6'4" or whatever. It's 6'3", 6'4". So we're pretty small in our centre back spots. You go into Europe, say if you get a team from the Balkans, for instance, they have big towering strikers. They're going to outdo you at corners. So someone like Julian is the sort that in Europe will be able to help us. But then the way he made those comments before Trophy Day, knowing Ange's history, he doesn't stand for that sort of thing. So him coming and speaking to Ange saying he wants to fight for his spot, okay, great. Prove it. Prove that you're the man for that job. You want it, go and win it.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'm looking at that going, I'm unsure if he's the right sort of player, but if he comes back to the form, as you said, against Lazio, then yes, that's the player we need. But then at the same time, I still want us to go and try and get Ko Itakura because he covers off 2 positions we need to strengthen, which I'll touch on later anyway. But is there anyone else you think will be moving on?
I think obviously Barca's been away to Utrecht. Joe Hart has now got the number 1 jersey, and the whole Benjamin Siegrist deal is very, very close to being completed. So I think that will either be a permanent move to Utrecht or Celtic will just wrap up his contract. I don't know if his contract is actually maybe up at the end of the season, so maybe that will be an issue. But for me, I think when you look at it, I think you've got players in defence, you've got players in midfield. I think Stephen Welsh could possibly go out on loan, gain a bit of. I think he can gain a bit of a kind of game time. Liam Scales is another player that's maybe going to Aberdeen, reportedly going to Aberdeen either or Killie. But I think Liam Scales is a player I really like. He's obviously not played, and I think he's been going through personal stuff that Ange knows about, and that's why he's not been in the squad a lot, kind of thing. He's very much a Johnny Hayes type player, where he's a grafter, he gets up and down the flank, works 100% for the team. But I don't know if I ever see him starting ahead of Greg Taylor. I think Greg Taylor's got that spot nailed down. In terms of
the Scales, I'll quickly jump in there. I don't even think we're playing him in his right position.
A lot of
centre back, so he should be playing there. But then at centre back, I've just said we're too short, and he'd be even shorter again. So the issue is for us with the level that we're playing at, he's the right player in the wrong body. He needs, if he was 5 or 6 inches taller, he'd be the exact guy we need.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Juranovic in terms of height as well, he's pretty small as well, kind of thing. So But in terms of other players that goes in the summer, I think Mikey Johnson, James McCarthy, Albion Ajeti, they're all players that really I wouldn't mind if they never pulled another Celtic jersey on again. Johnson's had so many chances. He's forever known as the kind of, I don't mean the boy wonder, but just kind of, he's always had this wee kind of tag alongside him where it's almost like, he's full of tricks, he's full of flicks, and he can score goals, but he's too injury prone, and there's something missing for his game. So I think Celtic need to get short of him. As I say, I've mentioned the Siegrist deal, but I just think there's a few players that could be heading out. I don't know if actually, I'm not entirely sure if Sorrell has gone yet. I know he went out on loan, but I don't know if he went out in a permanent. If he didn't, then Ismaila Sorrell was another one for me that could probably head for the exit as well. Came with a wee bit of promise, showed a wee bit, but not enough to be in that midfield. Definitely not.
Just checking something quickly because Martin in the comments is saying that Liam Scales is 6'3", which I'm finding a little odd because it doesn't look that big when you saw him play. So I believe you, Martin. Don't get me wrong, but if he is 6'3", then maybe he needs to be given a chance.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying he's playing him out of position kind of thing, and I think maybe the fact that he gets up and down that left flank probably puts him there in terms of, obviously you could play him like a kind of Scotland setup where, on the left hand side we've got Robbo and Tierney out on the left, and they both just switch back and forward in terms of running. But no, as I say, I think in terms of pre-season it'd be good to see Liam Scales maybe get a chance at centre back just to see how he copes.
Well, yeah, Wikipedia is saying 6'2". One other thing saying 6'3", as Martin said. So, or maybe it's just because when he's on the wing, he's running up and down. He's that gassed, he's bending over half the time because he's out of breath. That's why I thought he was a lot shorter than he is. So, I am honestly corrected right there. Let's give him a shot. What's the worst that can happen? We need that. Yeah. We need that left-sided centre back. He's 6'2", 6'3". We've got a guy in house. Give him a crack. What's the worst that can happen? He goes out there in a preseason game, as you're saying, Gaz. He struggles and we sell him. If he does well, it could be like the Ryan Christie breakthrough game over in Edinburgh that day.
Yeah.
Happy days. And yeah, so what areas of the team do you think we need to strengthen? We'll get into that then.
I think obviously
for Europe, not just for the league.
Yeah, because I'm thinking obviously like the whole goalkeeping situation is unusual because obviously Scott Bain signed a new deal this season and to extend his contract.
Why did we do that?
Very strange because I thought like, right, well, he's obviously then gone, that pushes Barkas out to number 3 and he becomes number 2 and things like that. But then you're looking in the summer and thinking, we've nearly got Benjamin Siegrist, who has been a fantastic keeper for Dundee United this season, one of the top performers. Pulled off some amazing saves against Rangers, Celtic, most of the league. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a great bit of business, but then Scott Bain must be thinking, I've went for the second choice to third choice. I'm never going to get again. So then what does Scott Bain do? Does he just bide his time and hope that he gets in maybe in one of the cup games? Does he get, does Ange Postecoglou maybe think to himself, right, I'm going to keep Joe Hart for Europe and potentially the league and give the two boys the 2 cups, so put Scott Bain in for the League Cup and put Siegrist in for the Scottish Cup maybe. Maybe that's an issue. I don't know. I know a lot of managers down south do it, and Pep and Jurgen Klopp obviously do that in the League Cups and the FA Cups kind of thing. So maybe that's an issue, that a possibility. Centre back, I still think we need another centre back. I know you're saying Liam Scales, you could put him in at centre back. For me, that's bordering on Celtic thinking we don't need to think. If he does well at centre back, Celtic are thinking, well, we don't need another centre back then because
that's the Peter Law conditioning we've been copping for the last decade or 2 decades. That's what that is. That's the automatic thinking. We've got someone, we signed him from. He's Irish. He's in house. That's Celtic won't go and sign another player from a position of strength, will we? That's what that is.
Yeah, it ticks all the boxes. If there's a player that can that can play in different positions, then ideal. Then we don't need to. In terms of left back, yeah, possibly get another left back. I know Alexandra Bernabe is very, very close to signing. I know his agent is saying he's close to signing with a European team in the next couple of weeks. I think Celtic are front runners. I think we've offered 3.75 million for him. So I would be very surprised if he doesn't come to Celtic. And I think that will be the left back kind of slot covered with Scales and Taylor as backup. Juranovic as well can play left back.
Monty as well will be back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, fun enough, Monty's actually a player that I forgot about, who I kind of actually like. It's probably one of the younger players last season that I really thought he's got a bit of something when I seen him in the games. I would still farm him out on loan, maybe put him back out to Aberdeen. I know he had his injury problems at Aberdeen last season, so he didn't play as much as he should have done. But I think when you look at the gaps that Rogic and Beaton have left us, that defensive mid, attacking mid, I think maybe just get a player with a bit of flair that can play in Tom Rogic's usual position. I think you need a big, tall, strong guy. I'm not even sure nationality-wise who you would go for, but just somebody that's commanding and that can play that defensive mid, and they can mop up any kind of loose balls.
Sort of player I want for that. I want us to get some big. I always look at it and go, you want a Patrick Vieira type, a big, tall defensive midfielder, right?
Yeah.
Or Milinkovic-Savic, the Serbian guy from Lazio. That's the sort of guy you want. Like, we're not going to get that player, but I think we need someone in that build, because with Bitton moving on and Rogic moving on, we're pretty short in the midfield. So I'd rather have a bit of height, a bit of size there. But for me, yeah, I agree with pretty much all the positions you said there. I think we need another centre back. The goalkeeper situation, I was worried that if long term it's going to be Toby Oluwayemi that will be taken over from Joe Hart. Let's be honest. That's the plan. If it works out properly, that's what we want to get to in 2 or 3 years' time. But until then, Siegrist is good to have, because if we had a massive drop-off and Hart got injured and we had to go from Hart to Bain in the Champions League game, I'd just be like, you better put me in goals. Because, it's just, I just don't rate the guy. So I'm glad Siegrist comes in, that fixes that.
Yeah.
Left back situation, Bernabe, he looks all promising. He looks like an Ange sort of player. My question with him is, he's coming in, because the way we did with Juranovic with Ralston, good league level, but then having a Juranovic over the top who's European level, that's great. We do the same now. Taylor's good enough domestically, and he's improved that he could be that European guy, but you bring in someone over the top, great. That automatically strengthens the squad. My one concern with Bernabe is Taylor gets caught out at corners and stuff all the time because of how small he is, and Bernabe is actually shorter than him.
Yeah.
That's the one concern I have. Blistering pace, so could suit Ange's system perfect. But does that mean he's a Diego Laxalt type? I don't know. I'm a bit iffy.
Do you think we need that? Do you think we need another striker possibly if a Yeti goes?
No.
Do you think we're pretty okay up there?
I think we're okay because we got Kyogo, we got Giacomakis, and then push comes to shove, third string striker is Maeda. He comes in off the wing.
Yeah.
Then Jocko goes over to the left wing. Then Abada comes into the right wing, and you're laughing because you've still got James Forrest backing up Abada. And then on the left wing for an option there, if you have someone like Monty who could play as a winger or as a wing back, or if you've got Mikey Johnson still around the squad, you're fine there. You've got enough depth through your wings to cover Maeda going forward. So I think we're fine up the front there. I think the issue is defensive midfield, centre back, left back. They're your key spots still to go. And the reason I want a defensive mid is because I want to push Kalmak one forward. I don't even think we need to replace Rogic. You've got Turnbull and how well he played early on. You've got O'Reilly. Kalmak can jump into that spot as well if need be. But then you've got Kalmak and Hatate who can play those roles. You've got Itaguchi to play as a defensive midfielder, but who else do you have there? In Europe, I don't want Kalmak in that spot. I want him playing one spot further forward.
Yeah.
So that's why defensive mid's more important than than a number 10.
Yeah, I quite like you mentioned Abada there. I quite like Abada actually as a kind of false striker kind of thing, because he played like that a few games for us, and I thought he almost kind of looked more comfortable in that position. You know, I can remember watching him against I think it was Boxing Day against St Johnstone. I can't remember if he scored the hat trick that day. He might have done, but he definitely got two, and he just looked so comfortable through the middle, and that was in that dreadful park in dreadful conditions. So, yeah, as you say, I think probably inclined to agree that we're probably okay up front, even if we lose a Yeti. You
Well, he
know,
didn't play last season. He did nothing, so we're not really losing anything from the squad.
exactly. I think he played one game, if you're lucky. I think he might have played in Europe early on against Betis, if I'm
Did
right
he
in
play
thinking.
when we had all the injuries just before Christmas, or was he injured then as well?
I think he might have been injured then as well, but
We had
I
Tony
think
Kenny
a
playing there.
Yeti I only remember playing against Betis, and I think he actually had a decent game, and that was the last we've seen of him. But no, as I say, I don't think he's a player that looks as if he's going to be at Celtic much longer. To be fair.
Fair enough. So, you got anything else you think we need to do on the squad side of it before we get into the fun Gaz stuff?
No, not really. I mean, obviously, it'll be interesting to see what Harry Kewell brings to the table in terms of the coaching side, because a lot was made of Ange coming over himself, you know, and not having any backroom staff. And I think a lot of Celtic fans were a bit wary about that because of their opinions of the likes of Gavin Strachan, John Kennedy, and things like that. So I think they were very, very wary of, right, well, maybe these guys were the problem. But when you look at it, I think Ange is very much like, the thing I like about Ange as well this season is when he's won awards for himself. He's won Manager of the Month. I don't know. I think actually from January he won it 5 months in a row, for the last 5 months in a row, which is unheard of. It's never been done, I don't think.
Yeah.
And the thing I
Yeah,
liked about it
7
was,
times over the season, I think it was.
and I think it was like he would always get his coaching staff into the photo. He would always get every kind of member, whether it's sports scientists, whether it's fitness coaches, whether it's under 21s. He wants everybody in the photo with him, because I don't know if it's just he doesn't like to be kind of, he doesn't take compliments well. I don't believe. He's very much like, no, it's not me. I seen an interview, an extended interview on Sky Sports, and he says when the whistle goes and he's standing in the dugout, he almost looks at himself as if to go, I'm almost expecting somebody to come and say, right, come on, mate, back to your seat, and you know, and like as if I don't belong here. And that's what I'm saying. It's so, he's so humble and so likable, kind of thing. I can't remember a Celtic manager that's been so liked probably since Martin O'Neill, I would say. So no, as I say, I don't think there needs to be anything done, but it will just be very interesting to see how Harry Kewell kind of approaches things and how the team changes next season, how it evolves.
Yeah, I see Harry coming in more as a kind of feel that Damien Duff sort of role that he had, where he was the
Yeah,
ex-pro there who, you know, if guys want to come and ask him, oh, so this happened in your career, you know, with injuries that Harry went through and all that. How did you manage that mentally? How did you get through it? How did you get back? With all the stuff he went through, that'd be a perfect sort of guy to learn from and have as a resource there. Plus, he's been decent as a manager so far in terms of, not in terms of win losses, but he's had a few decent jobs in the lower leagues in England. So he's got a bunch of games behind him. And the other thing is, if you've got guys like Abada, Jota, Maeda, Kyogo, wanting to learn off a guy who's won the Champions League
yeah,
and has done and been in multiple World Cups like Harry, that's a great opportunity for them to go to the learning tree and just sit underneath it and go, all right, Harry, sprinkle some knowledge on me. What do you got for me today?
yeah,
Just from hearing the old
absolutely.
story here and there, it's gonna improve them as players. So yeah, it'll be good to see what happens. And you know, Harry hasn't actually worked with Ange before, so they've got to develop that relationship too.
Yeah.
Now, Gaz, for the fun times, who would be your all-time favourite Celtic player other than Henrik Larsen, and why?
Well, there's been so many players that I've loved at Celtic throughout my life. You know, players, great servants to the club like Rogic, Beaton, Emilio Ezagiri, players like that. not always flash players, but just players that get a job done when they're asked and play to position if they need to. Growing up in the 90s, I loved Simon Donnelly. Absolutely loved him. Would replicate his goals, do the commentary, that sort of thing. So he was always one of my favourites. But I can't not mention this guy. Absolutely one of the greatest Celtic captain in my lifetime, Scott Brown. 14 years at the club, so many honours. You lose track of fingers and toes if you were counting all his trophies. He's gave us so many magical moments. The Bruni celebration he gave us, and just so happens it was against Juve, which made it even better. The kind of the handshake against Joey Barton in the first derby back when Rangers got promoted from the low leagues. That first handshake where Joey, I think the image is Joey Barton is actually looking at the ground and Scott Brown is looking.
Like, is there a crack there or something I can just hide in, or I can go and lay behind or something? Yeah, he's
and Scott Brown is just staring a hole through his head, just like staring straight at him. Absolutely phenomenal. And as I say, he gave us so many brilliant goals. I can remember a late winner at home to Hamilton, of all teams. I think we won the game 1-0 or 2-1. We scored in the 90th minute. Rangers dropped points that night. The goal at Rugby Park that helped us win the league. So there's been so many, and he's been a great servant to the club. Because he came to Celtic for $4.5 million for Hibs, and it was almost a bit Ryan Porteous like, where he was a wee bit of hothead, needed kind of tamed, and I don't believe I would have liked to have seen Porteous come to Celtic at one point, but I just think there's too much trouble with him. There's too much baggage, and I don't think Ange wants that kind of player at the club. So, but Scott Brown reminds me of Ryan Porteous, because that's the player I thought we were getting. I thought this could go horribly wrong, but I think he quickly kind of Tommy Burns took him under his wing and things like that, and I think he quickly adapted to being at Celtic, and then obviously getting the captain's armband, massive moment for him, and he really kind of stood. He kind of stood almost like, very much like Billy McNeil. I think he took a lot for the great Billy McNeil and how to behave on and off the park as a Celtic captain. I know there was a night off when, I don't know if you've seen the images of him going through Edinburgh, and he was photographed at 3 a.m, slumped in an alley, eating a kebab. And the papers made so much more of it than it should have been. But, if that's the worst, then they've gotten Scott Brown, and, that's absolutely nothing. For me, Scott Brown, absolutely legend of the club kind of thing.
Yep. So with that in mind, then, who would be your top 5 all-time players that you have seen play for Celtic in your lifetime? If you can't do it that, or you want to do it differently, name your all-time Celtic five-a-side team. You got 2 options on how you want to tackle this.
Well, I've just went with the top 5 players that I've seen playing for Celtic, and obviously one I've mentioned, one of my heroes growing up, Simon Donnelly. Actually, I bumped into him in the supermarket a few weeks ago, and he had his hat on, and I didn't really know it was him, and I was kind of like, but that way it just kind of caught me at the corner of my eye, and I was like, I actually felt like I was following him about the supermarket at one point, because it was that way. I didn't know if it was him, and I didn't want to go up to him in case it wasn't him. But eventually I went up and I started speaking to him, so it was absolutely brand new. Another player for me, Jackie McNamara. Absolutely love Jackie. What he's been through recently, obviously his health, and it's great to see him, up and at it kind of thing. I'm disappointed that he's not playing in the Masters, but I can understand why he's not, kind of thing. I would love to have seen him pull on the hoops again. The Magnificent Seven, Henrik Larsen. I don't know what more can be said about the guy. Even when he came back with Barcelona, you almost applauded the goal when he rounded the keeper and tucked it away. And so, as I say, Henrik's just, I just wish we'd got him sooner. I just wish we'd got him like as a youngster, and he'd spent his life at Celtic, because it's very unusual to see a player now, I think, that spends so long at the one club. It's loyalty's going out the window. You look at Paul Pogba, you look at Romelu Lukaku, for instance. they're just jumping about from club to club, filling their pockets, so...
Collecting jerseys, that's what we call it over here.
I just don't like players like that. I don't have any respect for them at all, but Larson's definitely makes my top 5. Lubo Moravcik, absolute genius, another player we should have got when he was younger. I was at an evening in Glasgow. It was Martin O'Neill evening, and some of these ex-players were there, and Lubo was there, and he's very, very much still Slovakian. Do you know what I mean? His English is still quite broken, but he's so funny because he doesn't mean to be funny. He's an unconscious comedian, I think you call it. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just so funny with the things that he says and story he tells. I can remember, obviously, the goals at Ibrox, when he turned the defender inside out and we won 3-0 that day. I think Larson might have got his 50th goal of the season that day. But I can remember being at Celtic Park, we're playing Hearts, and I can't remember for the life of me who whipped the ball across. Maybe Tom Boyd, for instance. He whipped the ball across, diagonal ball across, went I don't know how many feet up there, and Moravcik is out in the byline and he's just waiting for it. He's waiting for it to come down, and there's nobody near him, and it just turns round with his backside and traps the ball, and then goes in the maze run down the wing. And the fans were on their feet. Absolutely one of the best things I've seen in a football pitch, honestly. Absolutely phenomenal. And final player, another player who I wish had stayed longer, but I think he was getting homesick or whatever, Gary Hooper. I think he could have been very prolific like Henrik. I think he could have broke all sorts of records had he stayed at the club. So I'm gutted that he went when he did, but he was a fantastic player. Obviously, against Hearts, I think he scored 4 goals against Hearts in the final game of the season one year under Neil Lennon.
What a player.
Had a great relationship with Anthony Stokes, partnership. And as I say, just you look at Celtic teams throughout the years and you pick players out and put them into a different team. And I would have loved to have seen Gary Hooper in a team with in today's team with a player like Kyogo or a player at Brendan Rodgers' team. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me it was.
Or even Larson or Sutton. If he was in a team with Larson or Sutton, I just think, I would have loved to have seen him in a different Celtic team kind of thing.
Yep. What are some of the most memorable games that you've seen Celtic play, and what's so memorable about those games?
Well, I've kind of listed them into derbies, league deciders, and then European nights, because in terms of the derbies, probably one of the earlier ones I remember is when we drew with Rangers 2-each at Ibrox in a New Year's Day game or New Year game in 1999. Remember Alan Stubbs opened the scoring at Ibrox. Gabriel Amato equalised, and then I think Rod Wallace took the lead before. And this is, for some reason, I don't know why, but this is a moment I always remember, the equaliser for Celtic, because Lubo Moravcik had a shot for about 25 yards and put some swaz on it. Honestly, if you've not seen it, go into YouTube. It is phenomenal. He put some swaz on the ball. It smashes off the underside of the bar. Anthony Emmy, who was the Rangers keeper at the time, cannot get anywhere near it. Jumps back up. Larson, I think, out jumps Perini or Amoruso, and the ball goes into the side net, and then Niemi is scrambling across, ends up in the back end of it with the ball, and Larson moves away at the Celtic fans, and we were denied a Stonewall penalty, the most Stonewall penalty you're likely to see in these games, unbelievably. Nothing changes, Jane. Like the referees were just as bad back then as they are now, kind of thing. But then there's obviously derby games, like we beat Rangers 6-2 in the demolition derby, Martin O'Neill's first season. Chris Sutton bags a double, so does Larson. That was an amazing day as well because of the dominance I think Rangers had going into the games. And then when you look back towards a few years ago, just under Brendan Rodgers, when we beat Rangers 5-1, the game I was mentioning, Moussa Dembele stepped up to play, scored the hat-trick, and then the 5-0 when we win the league against Rangers. That was... I'm never confident going into Rangers Celtic games, but that morning I can remember waking up and I says to my family when to watch the game, and I says to them, we are going to smash him the day, and I've never said that before, and I says, if we don't stick 5 or 6 past them, we're as well chucking it, because they're rank rotten and their heads will be down. I think it was near the end of the season anyway. and we went 5-0 up after 50 minutes. I think Rogic scored a couple of minutes into the second half, and that was my only disappointment about that game, was that we didn't do double figures. We should have done double figures.
Yeah, I remember that game. We're just sitting there and it's like, yeah, that'll do. We're up 5. Cool, let's just, manage the game. Rather than, all right, let's go. If that was Ange now, we'd be pushing for 6, 7, 8, 9. You'd be pushing on.
Yeah.
But back then it was like, let's just maintain the margin.
Absolutely. And league deciders, I remember the Tommy Twist, Tommy Turn season, 2008. Went up to Tannadice, last game of the season. And the great thing about that was that it was all day just the build up to it. The build up to it in Glasgow, because Rangers could have won it, Celtic could have won it. Rangers went to Aberdeen, obviously lost 2-0. Novo got sent off, even better. And, Big Venegoor scored the only goal of the game, and seeing the helicopter hovering over Tannadice, I think we had a lock-in that night in the pub. I can't remember coming home. It was a phenomenal night. But equally, on the flip side, I suppose, a game I was probably proud of was a league decider in 2003 when we beat Kilmarnock 5-0 at Rugby Park. Alan Thompson missed a penalty. He'll not forgive me for saying that, but he missed a penalty, which would have taken the league it would have taken it to a playoff between Celtic and Rangers, because we would have finished equal goals, which would have been phenomenal in itself. But I can remember we were just back from Seville. We'd played, I don't know how many games, a ridiculous amount of games, and we'd ended trophyless, and I can just remember feeling so proud of the team for what they'd given us that season. The run to Seville, I think we reached the League Cup final and got robbed against Rangers. So as I say, absolutely phenomenal season. But the Euro nights, listen, you've got the games against Lazio, where Julian scored at Celtic Park. Olivier Cham scored the winner in Rome. Absolutely phenomenal scenes. Absolutely scenes I'll never forget. But I was at the Celtic Bayern Munich game last time we were in the Champions League. I think it was Coleman scored to give Bayern the lead, and then Callum McGregor got a ball from James Forrest, went through, megged the keeper, and the place, I've never heard a noise like it inside Celtic Park. The place went bananas. And then 3 minutes later, Martinez scores for Bayern and puts all the rights to wrong. But, I think getting back to the Champions League nights, I really want the best teams. I've heard a lot of Celtic fans give it, if we get Bayern and we get Barcelona and we get such and such, we'll get smashed. And I'm like, who cares? We're there, and we're there for 6 games, like it or lump it. You make the most of it. It'd be good to get teams that you can beat in the Champions League, like lesser teams, I suppose. But how good is it when you get a team like a full-strength Barcelona or Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund and you beat them at Celtic Park, and the feeling you get with accomplishing that?
Fortress Park, bring it back.
Absolutely, make it a fortress again. Do you know what I mean? Like, start winning games, start remaining unbeaten, kind of thing.
The thing for me with that, on that point, just say quickly, is I want a Real Madrid, or I want someone at that level, okay? But then I want us to have a crack at it, so that for us to improve in Europe, the key thing for me is if we can finish second in our group, great, and stay in after the the winter break, fine.
Yeah.
But if we go, even if we finish third and drop down into the Europa League, I want progress in terms of, if we go into the Europa League, I want to win that knockout. I want to break that duck. It's been too long. If we go past one round of that, then we're off to the races. But for me, I want a couple of big names to come, but then I want someone we can beat to get that third spot. That's what I want in an ideal draw.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you say, you're never going to get any better if you keep playing rubbish teams in Europe or lesser teams in Europe. So if you play like say, a full strength Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid, and yeah, you might get beat. But if you get beat trying to play football and trying to win a game, you get beat 2-1 or 1-0 or whatever, then that's fine. I think the fans accept that. But it's obviously when you get teams like PSG and we get smashed 7-0 and things like that last time, and it's not easy. It's not easy to watch, and it's not great to watch. But I think you look at these players that play at Celtic Park, and you think, I've seen him play live. I've seen him play live. Do you know what I mean? Like phenomenal players, like Messi and Ronaldo and things like that, Ronaldinho, Buffon, Inzaghi, that sort of thing. So
Yep.
I think it's great to see these players just play at Celtic Park.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We always say it. It's about the levels, and what you're just touching on there is, these guys are at the top of their game. So you get that exposure. A guy like Matt O'Reilly, for instance,
Yeah,
he's going to learn so much in 90 minutes playing against those guys. Then he'd learn so much more in that 90 minutes than he'd learn over a whole season of Conference League or Europa League football. So that'll be good for him. And then, if we can improve our level the second time around we play these teams and get that second or that third spot, great, perfect. Then we stay at it. And what that does is what we were saying earlier about recruiting for Europe. If you're doing well in Europe and the players are getting their standards up to a higher level there, they come back to the league. That'll take care of itself.
absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. It's listen. I don't really. When Rangers reached the Europa League final there and obviously lost to Frankfurt in penalties, I was more relieved, I suppose, because when you live in Glasgow, it's constantly like shoved in your face, if the other team does well. And my thinking was during that game, I was thinking, God, if they win this, I'm thinking I'm not going to believe it. Able to leave the house for 6 months. They'll be in the Champions League, they'll be in pot one, they'll have that money, they'll have this, they'll have that. And it starts to put doubts in your mind. They lose, obviously, the Europa League final, so they've lost potentially all that money. But it's teams, it's seeing teams like Celtic and Rangers doing well in Europe and getting to finals and reaching knockout stages of Europe. As I say, that makes the league better. It gets our coefficients up, kind of thing. But just purely from a rivalry point of view, I definitely did not want to see them win the Europa League. I don't buy into all this. If a Scottish team gets into a European final, like if Aberdeen or Motherwell or Hearts or Hibs getting a European final, yeah, absolutely back them. But no, not when it's your rivals. Not when it's your rivals. I'd expect
100%.
fully the same from them. If we got to a European final again, I'd fully expect them to be praying that we get beat, because that's just the way it should be.
Of course, 100% agree with you on that. So what we'll do then, because you're talking about players that you've seen play, last question I was having, I'm going to set the groundworks for you, Gaz. Celtic has unlimited resources. We've got some chic or something funded us. So wages, transfer, everything, not an issue at all. You don't have to worry about transfer fees. You don't have to worry about financial fair play. None of that. So basically, we're pretending we're Rangers in the 90s with their EBTs. So who would be the one player that you have seen play in your lifetime and wish that Celtic signed them other than Messi or Ronaldo?
So probably I would go back maybe to kind of, I would say, mid-2000s, I would say. And I've seen some phenomenal players play, like Thierry Henry, Buffon and players like that, as you say, Messi and Ronaldo. Paul Scholes, I think, was a phenomenal player to see live. But for me, I think it's going to be Ronaldinho or Del Piero. I think probably I'd be pushing more towards Ronaldinho.
Mirren's favourite never happened player. There you go.
I think when I look back in that Juventus game, the free kick Del Piero scored against us, absolutely tore us to pieces that night, and really struggled against him. But Ronaldinho, for me, he's just an absolute baller. He's just an absolute legend of the game. Who could forget that free kick for Brazil against England, in 2002. A goal against Chelsea when I still don't know to this day what he done with his feet. When he was dancing with his feet and then just dinked it in the bottom corner. So for me, yeah, probably Ronaldinho would be going towards. Funnily enough, I was actually asked before if I could bring anybody to Celtic that in my lifetime, a player that, as you say, blank checkbook. And he actually laughed when I said it, because this is a guy that's obviously spent his life doing in England at various clubs. He's won every honour down there, including the European Cup. He's an absolute grafter of a player. James Milner, for me.
Oh, yeah.
I would have loved to have seen James Milner, Pete James Milner, up here in that midfield with Scott Brown. I think that would have been phenomenal, Pim.
Yeah, wouldn't have thought of that. So, Gaz, what we'll do is we'll leave the podcast there. We'll wrap it up. Thanks for jumping on and having a chat.
No worries, mate.
Where they can find you on the socials and your podcast.
Yeah, so basically Celtic FC Appreciation. We're on the podcast on Spotify and Apple Music, wherever you download your podcasts. And obviously great numbers on Facebook, but we're really pushing the YouTube kind of thing. But you just search Celtic FC Appreciation. And obviously I've got you guys, your link to your podcast on the page now anyway. So hopefully get you a few more viewers and a few more fans kind of thing.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks again, Gaz. Appreciate it.
No
Enjoyed
worries.
the conversation.
Cheers, mate.